Alan. Managing change through effective communications. And as you saw, I had to adjust the viewfinder right there. Sometimes we have a few technical opportunities, shall we say. Today's discussion, emotional perceptions and procedures. What are your emotional perceptions and procedures? And we're going to kind of focus more on the business side because as colleagues and associates in the marketplace, we are constantly evaluating one another and being evaluated, along with, and good morning, Stowe, thank you for joining, and along with the personality profile models that we've spoken about in this year's earlier chats. We want to begin to drill down to how to actually address our emotional state, the desired outcomes that we're looking for. Good morning, Faye. Thank you for checking in. And therefore have some resolve, have some management. Some people like to say control. As we know, control is absolute. And for those of us who have had a few days on Earth, we know that control is somewhat difficult to maintain. Whereas managing is an ongoing process. You're going through stages in life, you're going through situations in life, and of course you have your perceptions and procedures from our culture, our family, from education, from studies, and most importantly from our own experience. As you can see, I am back in the woods. This is my little walking, I call this my brainstorming sessions. I come out here in the woods, I'll give you a quick view of what we have here. And there's our children that we're following today. And we kind of, this is our way of getting out relatively early in the morning and clearing our heads, getting our thoughts together, as they say, getting on point. So what are your emotional perceptions and procedures? Well, first off, what is an emotion? It is any charge in our mind, in our brain, that sets us off. So it could be a pleasure or a pain. When we talk about emotions, ironically, many practitioners will talk about the negative. I, as you know, and you may have heard on earlier chats, talk about one of the same, pain and pleasure. It is how we give meaning, how we've been taught to give meaning to those emotions. So if you just received $1 million, right, there's the smile, right, there's an emotional perception that you can see. Now my procedure is all important. So first of all, we have to acknowledge that our minds are actually telling us something is perceived as good or perceived as not so good. A danger, a threat, being hurt, being loved. What does that really mean? That one is a conundrum when we say love, because we've seen all manner of behavioral inconsistencies with one person's meaning of love and another. So when we talk about emotional perception and procedures in business, when you're recently given a charge to create something, manage something, to conduct a project, to facilitate, what are you feeling? What is the meaning that you feel that sets off your perception of what you've just been given? Now, by acknowledging that, the very fact that you acknowledge it means that you are at least in tune with what is going on around you. Many people simply subscribe to what they've been told, what they've been taught, and then they get into trouble because they really don't have a procedure, a structured procedure upon which to build and sustain the desired outcomes. Because in many cases, again, that's why I'm talking about business, you're going to be working with many people. And all these people require different tactile engagement, different emotional quotants, okay? And think about it yourself. When you're at work and you simply ask someone for a pen, a piece of paper, the access to something, would you share a file? Would you send a file? Now, I know, of course, because of your familiarity with one another, it could be very casual. On the other hand, if you're going upstream, or you find the personality of the other person non-aligned or disaligned with you, then how are you managing your state, your emotions, your perception of that, and therefore what procedure are you following? So there are kind of four main tenets to this, and I'm going to pull out my notes, and those of you who know my live chats, I think it's important always to do a little homework, a little research. 1, it means you care. 2, it means you're on purpose. And 3, it means that the people you're sharing your information with can also validate what it is that you're saying in relation to what they know. So it's a constant forward movement of improvement. So here are my notes. Some of you are wondering, well, what is pulling me? As I showed you earlier, my dogs, we go for walks most mornings. And it really doesn't matter what the weather's like. Some of you may have seen rain, snow. That, by the way, is managing my emotional state. I wish to go out. I prepare to go out. I see what I have to have in the way of dress, and I facilitate. So I'm doing what I actually say. So here are the three, we talk about emotional perceptions and procedures. 1, identify the signal. So you're given a job, you're asked to work with somebody, and immediately you identify how you are receptive or not so receptive to that request. You clarify what it is that you want. What is the outcome? Oh, we all say we want a positive outcome. It's how we get there that's the challenge. And thirdly, we take action, and that's the big one. This morning, woke up early, decided to go for a walk, grab the dog, get out the house. At work, you have to reach out to people and ask them when are they available, can they contribute, and in what intent will they contribute, and so that you can move out with at least a basic framework of wanting to be successful. It's a matter now of how to cultivate that success. So our emotions can be pain and pleasure. They can be hurt. They can be resentment, frustration. When we say that we're hurt, when we use those words, we're lonely, what are we actually saying? What are we hurt about? What are we hurt over? What has caused this perception to ring in our ears or between our ears? And that's where we begin to arrest the reactionary behavior as opposed to a response. So I say it's cold. What can I do about it? What has caused the cold to be registered? Do I have gloves? Can I work with the people? Can I approach them in a different way? Did I set up the situation so that they would be receptive? Do I have to do some rapport building? Did I ask for their input in a way that's receptive for them? So immediately my perception is followed by a procedure, a standard, a methodology, framed around culture, framed around the region that you're in. So for example, many people, of course, in the north of America are always moving fast. On the other hand, people in the southern states, a little bit more subdued. Are you giving time for that? I work with people in project management, and They work around the world. And one individual, young gentleman, in his late 20s, early 30s, said he knows he's a charger personality. We went back to the personality profiles. And in Malaysia, that doesn't work so much. Certainly with the people that he's working with. So immediately he's seen his emotions wanting to get things done, move forward, be productive. And yet that meaning has to be adjusted to the environment he's in. Are you doing that for yourself? And are you doing that with your people? If you're not, then you're missing the better part of 30, 40, maybe even 50% of their productive capacity. We call that intellectual capacity. So Norma, thank you for joining in. Shabna, excuse me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, thank you for joining in. And Faye, all right guys, thank you. We're talking about our emotional perceptions and procedures, and the emotions are generated from certainly our experience in life, what we've been taught in life, how we've been given certain signals that should indicate a positive or negative. Now, you know, we always also talk about litmus testing. Is that true? Are we taking the time to arrest our initial behavior, our initial thoughts, I should say, to align with what we're hearing, seeing, experiencing? Here's one for you. How is it that some people who come from fairly fortunate environments, whatever that means, compared to other people who seem to come from somewhat desperate situations, how come the latter is more humble, civilized, more acclimated to cultivating partnerships, relationships? So that's where I talk about the emotional state that we're in and how do we define it. We call about perception is the meaning we subscribe to it. That meaning is all important, because when we're trying to communicate with one another, certainly in a business environment, that's where the struggle, the challenge is. If we can step back a moment and arrest our own, we call that situational leadership, by the way, we can then tell that other person or group of people that we're interested in a mutually beneficial outcome for everybody. We're going to evaluate, we're going to consider, we're going to include, and we're going to move forward with a time frame, perhaps understanding that we may need to come back and adjust or accommodate other methods because the first or second attempt didn't give us the percentage that we're looking for, didn't provide the emotional quotient that people require, and in some cases, the social impact that our efforts provide, our efforts create. You know, in project management, we talk about project, service, or benefit. So I'd like you to consider this. When you're going through your day, when you're looking at working with different people, think of your own emotions first. Where are they coming from? What is charging you? Then give yourself some time to establish your perception. Is your perception of an individual on your team really accurate? Did you go in there and do some basic rapport building so that you could establish where they are coming from? Did you ask in a pleasant manner, not just polite in the European sense, more in the emotional connection? We call that emotional quotient. Are you including that in your findings? And if you're not, then what you need to do is look back at some of your other projects, look back at some of your other experiences. And if they weren't as wonderful, as supportive, as results-based as we need them to be, then there is your test of why your You're validating why you need to adjust or use a different procedure. It is intellectual capital. It is situational leadership. It is emotional quotient. Your procedures then will be founded on both quantitative and qualitative analysis, which is all done in your mind. Believe it or not, our brains are very capable of all of this if we give it a chance. Instead of saying, we do not have time, you create time. As they say, at the end of the day, life goes by faster than any summer vacation. And I know all of you out here who have experienced any form of work, engagement, you know that initially you're charged, you're emotionally high on what you want to get accomplished. As you go through those steps working with people, that begins to wane. And as 70-75% of projects do not come out favorably for one means or another, the emotional high is totally lost. And nobody really goes back and evaluates and assesses, which is the learning process. That's the learning stage. Reflection is the learning stage. So I'm actually asking you to do that up front. What are your emotions? Where do they come from? Who taught you them? Are they valid? Your perceptions, are they valid? Did they produce the outcomes that you wanted in the first place? And then, of course, your procedure. How do you manage? How do you govern? How do you create the state and environment that's warm and fuzzy and very difficult? You know, we always talk about soft skills. And the first response I say in a group is, well, anyone here with children? Anything soft about managing and communicating with your children? So this is Ronald Allen, a quick live chat for today, Saturday morning. By all means, you can go to my channel on YouTube. Certainly look my name up, ronaldmallen.com, for my website. And as we say, you know where to find me. Enjoy your weekend.